when there's nothing left.
When the world's feeling hollow,
Can you hear it calling? Can you feel it in your soul? Can you trust its longing and take control?
fly, open up the part of you that wants to hide away. You can shine, forget about the reasons why you can't in life, and start to try, 'cause it's your time, time to fly.
In a moment, everything can change.
Feel the wind on your shoulder.
For a minute, all the world can wait. Let go of yesterday.
Fly, open up the part of you that wants to hide away. You can shine, forget about the reasons why you can't in life, and start to try. 'Cause fly, forget about the reasons why you can't in life, and start to try. 'Cause it's your time, time to fly.
In a moment, everything can change.
Could you add sometimes we get so serious that we can't make any progress. You can tell when there's a lot of constriction in your body or constriction in your mind. And you might want to ask yourself that question, am I trying too hard? So the way that the Buddha and the way that the Dharma instructs us is to encourage us to not play games with ourselves, to be serious. There are things we're serious about in life, and we know that we're serious about it by the attention that we give them, how we tend to them, the choices that we make, the decisions that we make, how much time we give to it. Think about like what we want to do in life in terms of a career, and how many years we'll give to the training for that, which when we die, it's gone. When we die, it's just gone. But things that we say matter to us, you know, how much time do we really give to that? I mean, we're busy people, right? We have a lot of things to do in the course of a day. And so I ask you, in the course of a day, how much time do you give to your spiritual practice? That'll let you know, like, what kind of progress you are making and what you stand to gain for it. If you give 5 minutes to it, that's what you get. If you give an hour to it, that's what you get. If you give 3 hours to it, that's what you get. And so he cautions us not to fool ourselves and think that we're giving more to our aspiration than we're actually giving. Because if we do, then we'll start to feel a sense of frustration with our spiritual practice, like like we're not getting enough out of it for what we give. And in that way, we lose confidence in the capacity of practice, instead of being able to look seriously to how much we give to it and what we expect to get back from what we give. But on the other hand, there's also the caution. It's kind of like walking on a tightrope. You can't like just walk straight across. You have to bend a little bit with the way the wind is blowing, the movement of your body that causes an imbalance, that you can't walk like just straight across a tightrope. And in this way, you make it across to the other side. And so it's like that with spiritual practice. Sometimes we have to back up a little bit because we're applying too much effort, and that efforting then is coming out of our mind. Now, if he's already said that what we're trying to do is to still, still, not steal, but to still our thoughts, then we know that if we are putting too much emphasis on thinking, that we're going in the wrong direction. I mean, that's 101. We can know that. We might think that by more thinking, we will unpack the whole issue and we'll come to a place, but it's enlightening, is lightening up on the mind, on the ordinary mind. Excuse me. It's lightening up on the ordinary mind. And in that space of backing up from that mind that thinks it knows, or that mind that thinks it has the capacity to know, and that particular mind is not the mind king, but that's the mind of the what? Consciousness.
The
Sixth consciousness, that's the ordinary mind, the mind that comes to its conclusions based on what you see, hear, taste, touch, smell, and think. I'm going to say that every day because that's what we do. We make decisions based on what we see, hear, taste, touch, smell, and think. And it says that that mind is the mind that got you here. If this is enough, then you don't have to do anymore. If this is not enough, this reality that one has created, there are other realms and there are other worlds in the incontrovertible teachings. I think that's in Sutta number 60. Yes, the incontrovertible teaching. I only know it in English. It's the Apangaka Sutta, and it is number 60. It says, and when he talks about the incontrovertible teaching, he was talking to this. I like this sutta because this is a sutta that was directed towards the householders. And he asked them, is there any teacher agreeable to you in whom you have acquired faith supported by reasons? And they said, no, we don't trust anybody, and we don't really believe uh, anything. There's no teacher agreeable to us in whom we have acquired faith supported by reasons. It said, since you've not found an agreeable teacher, you may undertake and practice this incontrovertible teaching. For when the incontrovertible teaching is accepted and undertaken, it will lead to your welfare and to your happiness for a very long time. And what is this teaching? And then he started talking about what we now call the Dharma, or what we now call Buddhism. This difficulty once you put a label on something, like it becomes fixed and concrete, and it takes on a quality based on a label, and that's unfortunate. It's just the insufficiency of language prajna. Because language prajna starts from a place of ignorance, and it takes you someplace where you can get a footing on acceleration of wisdom and understanding. So it's starting like at zero, and then it gradually increases. So you have to know that language prajna then is the least way that you can come to understand those things that are higher than the level of our ordinary mind and our ordinary ignorance. And so take everything that you learn in teaching with a grain of salt. Not that the teaching might be incorrect, but that the mind might not know how to unpack it in a real way. So we do the best. We do the best that we can. And so he says there are some who hold the view that when one acts or makes others act, that when one inflicts sorrow or makes others inflict sorrow, or oppresses others and makes others oppress others, or when one intimidates or make, honestly, this was not related to anything happening.
Okay. It's our minds.
Yep, that. Okay, so now I know where the minds of the people are. Because when I was reading this and studying this, my mind was in a completely different place last night. And it's because we did the King of Prayers last night, and it's just so lovely, and it's like a 25-minute prayer. And as soon as we started it, inviting the holy beings in, I mean, it just took off, and it just put us in a certain zone. It was fabulous. Um, and 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 there was in the aspiration of that prayer such a stripping down of one's ego or one's pride or one's station or who one thinks they were. Like, we were in the presence of beings that, for me, made me feel like an ant. And it was so marvelous because it let me know where there is to go. So I was in a state, couldn't stay there because it's not my state. But I entered into that state on the basis of those holy beings who were present with us. And we kind of arose to their level. I'm back to Pannavati today. But last night, I wasn't at Pannavati state because of whose presence or what presence I was in, and it lifted me to that state. And so then I could have an experience of perceiving something, of thinking something, of knowing something at a higher level than I can just ordinarily function on. And so it's like when one enters into jhana, and it's based on applied and sustained thought. So while Busita was reading the prayer, and she has this cadence and this way that, uh, unlike me, doesn't interject so much personality into it. So you can like just so clearly hear the words. I'll be like you when I grow up. You can so clearly hear what's being spoken, and you can enter into it. And it was just lovely. So he was saying to these householders, if you don't have anything that interferes and disrupts and uplifts your ordinary mind so that you can come to know some states that are superior to the states you ordinarily walk in and live your life in, then you can take on this teaching because it will introduce you to those states. And he says, so some people think, so that's what I was thinking about when I read this last night. But today, the Dharma, the Buddha says, Buddha Master says that the truth is not just the truth sitting out here dangling, hanging, but that truth is always, the ultimate truth is always tied to something else. So there is the truth for who, at what time, in what place, so there's all these factors that come into it. It's not just the truth, the truth. And so today, as I'm reading this, it's taking on a different quality. That's why you could read the same things over and over every day, and every day you would have a new Dharma talk, a new Dharma instruction, a new Dharma way to look at things. That's how we get the depth and the breadth of the Dharma, and not like a superficial idea or understanding. And so he says, mm, Brahmins hold doctrines directly opposed to each other. He says, when one acts or makes others act, there is no merit and no outcome of merit. It is expected that they will avoid these three wholesome states, namely good bodily conduct, good verbal conduct, and good mental conduct, and that they will undertake and practice three unwholesome states, namely both bodily misconduct, verbal misconduct, and mental misconduct. And he says, why is that? Because those good recluses and Brahmins do not see in unwholesome states the danger, the degradation, and the defilement, and nor do they see in wholesome states the blessing of renunciation and the aspects of cleansing. So there is something that we have to see in the degradation of something that needs to be laid down, but we have to also have a capacity to see the blessings as well as the degradation. There are many, many different methods of teaching, and our particular lineage is the lineage of blessings and practices. So we have the practice, but we also have the blessings. Now, blessings are like having money in the bank that you don't know is there. If you don't know it's there, you don't use it. Right, you don't spend it. But if you know it's there, then you can spend it. It's not a matter of like, is it really there or not? Like, is that real? Do I believe it? It says that if you know that it's there, you spend it. How does one come to know that it's there? It is through the sharing, the impartation of those who have entered into it. And as they tell us about it, we can garner confidence and faith that there is something here. I mean, we get driven and pulled along a certain trajectory all the time. And we're saying, like, I don't believe in faith. I mean, I believe in rationality. You know, when I see it, I'll believe it. But we believe a lot of things that we don't see based on some other factors and some other indicators. So he's not saying you have to have blind faith, but you have to have some faith, or that is some confidence, or that is thinking that there is the possibility that there's something other than this to do anything, to undertake anything. It's the same with the Dharma. I mean, when I run out at the last minute, I have confidence my car's gonna start because I got gas in it. The car's not that old and it ran yesterday. But it doesn't mean that it definitely will, and doesn't mean I'm crazy to have confidence that my car's running. But when we get down to this, something that's so crucial, we're not willing to investigate hardly anything in it. It's we just have this idea, well, you do you, you know, and if you doing you brings you a lot of pain and suffering, you might try to do somebody else. Try what somebody else has tried and see if that helps you, you know. And he says, but if it doesn't, and then he said, then you can discard that. So when do you discard it? Before you try it? After, right. So he says you have to put it into a practice, or establish it as a possibility, and then you can know for yourself if it does not. And he says, but since there actually is doing, one who holds the view there is no doing has wrong view has wrong intention. Since there actually is doing, one who makes the statement that there is no doing has wrong speech. Since there actually is doing, one who says there is no doing is opposed to those who hold the doctrine that there is doing. And since there actually is doing, one who convinces another there is no doing convinces him to accept an untrue Dharma. And because he convinces another to accept an untrue Dharma, he praises himself and he disparages others. Thus, any pure virtue that he formerly had, he has now lost, and corrupt conduct is substituted. And this becomes wrong view, wrong intention, wrong speech, opposition to noble ones, convincing another to accept an untrue Dharma, and self-praise and disparagement of others. These several evil, unwholesome states thus come into being with wrong view as their condition. So, I like this kind of teaching because this has a kind of rationality or way that I can check up on myself. If I think I'm right, he gives me a checklist. Go down this checklist and see how many of these conditions that you meet. But who did he say this to? He said this to people who had no spiritual guide, no right, and no teaching that they held to direct them in life. And he said, so if you don't have one here, I can give you one, you know. And he did that. But I like the section in here that says there are some who hold whose doctrine and view is this: there is no cause or condition for the defilement of beings. Beings are defiled without cause or condition. There's no cause or condition for the purification of beings. Beings are purified without cause or condition. There's no power, no energy, no manly strength, no manly endurance. All beings, all living things, all creatures are without mastery, without power, without energy, molded by destiny, circumstance, and nature, and thus they experience pleasure and pain in the six classes. There are some that hold this doctrine of non-causality. And he shows them how to break it down, so that they can investigate and ask themselves, does that actually make sense? Do things just happen? Does it just happen stance that things happen? Or which doctrine, since you don't have one, here's two. One is causality and one is non-causality. This is all causes are due to conditions. There has to be an underlying cause that produces a certain action, and that creates the standing ground of being. And based on how you respond to this, it becomes now a cause, and it produces another action or effect, and that's co-arises with the execution of this cause, even though the fruit of it, the condition that it produces may not occur at this moment. It has laid the groundwork, set the stage for a future condition to come forward. And he says, and then there's the opposite, that S just happens, and he says, now, which one of these, thinking deeply, which one of these is, do you think? Now, if one say, well, on this situation, I'll take causality. On this situation, I think no causality, But he said it's got to be one or the other. Otherwise, you have no stability or basis for understanding anything. So I think that most Buddhists do not have a firm grounding in the universal law of causality. And so when things do happen, they get muddle-minded, can't get confused, can't figure out why Why is this happening to me? Can I find a way to end the suffering? Because can I see a correlation between the truth of cause and condition? But I tell you, if one does, then the trigger for anxiety and for fear and for depression, it loses its footing. And that's the beginning of the fall. Because when that confusion begins to be dispelled, there's a kind of inspiration and aspiration that takes hold to you, a kind of courage and confidence that you can handle anything that comes into your world, because it would not be in the world except that the conditions for that, the causes for that have been implemented, and so the condition can appear. Now, it doesn't mean like you do nothing. We do something with every condition, every moment of the day, And so there is an action that one can undertake in this present moment, whether you have confidence that you can take any meaningful action or not, depends upon the wisdom that you garner and gather to act in the very moment, to overcome or to change the trajectory of what has already appeared. And we spend more of our time blaming, accusing, looking back, not to see what could have been done better, but looking back to see who we're going to blame for the problem, But he says this to give us a trajectory towards creating. I don't like to use that word creating, because there's a whole movement around about us being creators, and I don't want to muddle the language. But when I say creating, I'm talking about producing effects based on better causes. So he suggested when we understand this, we know what to do in the present moment, because the present moment is setting us up for the next one, for the next moment, for the future. So whether something good happens to us or not, or whether there is calamity, the past is gone. Whatever was done that set this into motion, it's already in motion now. So sometimes we say, well, that history forgotten is history that will repeat itself. And I think that's very true. But there is a difference in how we approach the history in this present moment that changes or modifies our actions so that they are useful and turn us towards the kind of future we want to have, or what we want to see. And sometimes that can be doing something that improves circumstances. Sometimes that can mean just letting a thing go. And that's why we talk about the 8 worldly winds: the praise and blame, loss and gain, pleasure and pain, fame and shame. If one can cultivate a non-differentiating mind and just be in the present moment, doing what is beneficial and what is useful, then he says that's better than trying to figure out what happened in the past and trying to do something with it. What will I do now, right in this moment? And so if I'm in the moment and I have agitation, it's probably not going to be a good idea for me to go and try to talk to people who are agitated. If I am just consumed by anger, it's not going to be good for me to go and try to talk to an angry crowd. If I am overcome by fear of sickness, it's not going to be good to me to go and talk to somebody who's dying, because that's not the energy that they need. That's not something I can give them. So he says, get your own. And when you actually have it, then when you go in the presence of people such as you have, you freely give. You don't have to think it up. You don't have to try to conjure it up. You don't have to so much use other people's words in your mouth, but that it becomes such as you have, what you have become, what you have actually become, and that you give it spontaneously. I remember I was I had a job one time, and it was at Providence Hospital, and I was on the hospice ward. And, so when you went in, I'm sure there's been a lot of improvement in hospice care and so forth. So I'm not knocking hospice, but I'm just talking about in the hospital, it really comes down to numbers with a dollar sign in front of it. So they've already figured out like how long people are expected to live, and when they give them placement and so forth. And so I'm there on this ward, and they call me in one day and they said, we have a problem. And I said, okay. And they said, the people in your ward are not dying fast enough. And so I said, so we want to know what you're doing. I said, well, I'm praying for them, that's for sure. And, I was Pentecostal, and I'm praying, I'm laying hands on them, I'm calling down angels, I'm doing some of everything, And but that was just in my own heart and in my own mind, and this is the lens through which I saw life, and the lens through which I interacted with people. They said, "But we're going to have to move you from this ward," and they actually. They actually did. Now, the good thing is when I got removed from the ward, there was a secret group of doctors and nurses, and they were intercessors, but but they had to keep it really hush hush. Um, and they found out that I got removed because people were living. They just weren't dying, and so they said you should come with us. We have prayer meetings in the basement of the hospital. And he told me where to find on the other side of the boiler room. And, so we had to go way, way deep underground to find it. So when I got there, now I was Pentecostal, but this group was different. They were doing stuff that I didn't know anything about. Like if I didn't know about it in Christianity, it did not exist. And so, because I had just reached the pinnacle of what there is to know in that spiritual tradition. I was pretty sure, talking to God and Jesus every day and all that kind of stuff. And so it's good stuff. But so I go down there, and, it was like, we get into a certain state, and you might call it Shakti, would hit you, and you was like getting electric shocks or something when your mind went into a certain place and you entered into a certain field. It was like a shock, and I saw, and we would be flipping over the chairs and putting our hands on steam, hot radiators, the steam coming out. You don't even get burned. You flip over, fall, hit your head on the concrete floor. It don't bother you. You just, you were in that state. And then when you came out of it, and people checking on you, see if you're all right, and like you were perfectly fine, because in that state was a state that actually overrode the aggregates. I ain't know nothing about nothing except at that time, except accepting Jesus as my savior, and all my dependence was on that. I didn't know anything about any uh personal capacity for attainment. And so but they were doing something different. They were like they were almost like dancing in harmony. They weren't like do all of this. They were like just moving, just this beautiful movements. And then when they were speaking in tongues, they weren't like just jab 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 out speaking in tongues. They were like they sang it in tongues in harmony. I said that's not real. I said that can't possibly be real. You know. And then something asked me the question inside, what if it is? I said, well, if it is, then I want it. And then shortly after that, I say, led out of the Pentecostal movement into the charismatic movement. And I had another experience. Now, so it puts one experience upon another, upon another, upon another, you know, and all of that becomes part of my just Pannavati, not Sue, not Sardas, not Peter's, not the Pannavati's personal experience and understanding of reality or what is true. Now, I can't make anybody walk in that. That is for me to walk in based on my direct experience. So I have a way of knowing truth and having intersected with it in a certain kind of way that is suitable for this mind stream. And each of us has to find that stream. There is no other way that one can enter into it. And so, however many people in this room, it's that many different methods for them to have an encounter with reality. That's how it is. And until this becomes personal to you in that kind of way, you won't make a lot of progress. You'll just be an academic student. You just learn some Dharma concepts that you can Paul parrot and you can talk about in your head. Because the mind that created this reality is not going to be the mind that takes us beyond it to a greater reality. So I say this to you to say, only use the intellect to the point that it allows you to open up to a concept. Doesn't mean that you have to believe it just because somebody said he said it. I mean, the Buddha didn't. This is not a Buddha Bible. The Buddha didn't write this. Matter of fact, they try to make us learn Pali as monastics, but Buddha didn't speak Pali itself. So why do I want to learn all that Pali? I'd rather have a few words in English that I can understand and create a starting point for unpacking a wisdom that will ultimately go beyond words. But you'll know that is true because you have a direct experience of something that lets you know. That's why he would always they'd ask these questions, and he'd just say, "Hey, Hipasico, just come see for yourself." And so people are always saying today to rope in Westerners, that Buddha loved questions. So he says, ask me questions. But I'm not so sure that's a true representation, of him. It's just a way like you can just rope in Westerners because we have so many questions. But he says that if you will open up to hearing about some principles of the universe that I know for myself actually exist. If you are willing to open up to the possibility that that just might be true, then you just might come to know by direct experience what those things are, and they take you closer to a reality. And so we start with analyzing, because that's what the ordinary mind does. It's constantly analyzing. It's constantly, asking questions about this and that and the other. And then when it thinks it has the answer, or we've been given an answer that we can explain to others, we think we have entered into the reality of it just because we can use words to explain it to others, and we think we've got it. And this great delusion causes us to miss it, yet we can impress each other and we can be proud of our attainment because we have used the language prajna that starts at 0, and we never go on to really to gain the accomplishment that is possible on the path. There's nothing wrong with the path. The path really does take you somewhere, unless you are using your mind to understand the sayings of those who complete the path. This is, and which is there is nowhere to go and there's nothing to do. But that's after you've gone. So in the beginning, there is somewhere to go and there is something to do. And the more we understand that, and the more we enter into that, so that going becomes automatic and that doing becomes spontaneous, it's at that point then that there's nowhere to go and there's nothing to do. So I asked who did their homework? Who remembers what the homework was? Because I forgot, but but I had already done my homework, so I did it the week before. So can you tell me what it was? You?
Me.
I mean, I know you at least did something with it because
It's
you
something, yeah,
wrote
sure.
me.
Yeah, I did do something. So my understanding of the homework is now that we have gained a certain level, higher level, I'm not sure that's the right word, of understanding, given what we've been practicing, how are we currently seeing our obstructions?
And everybody else agreed that was.
That's
I'm
pretty
sure
much it.
not,
You said
I'm sure
in
different
relation,
people did
no,
things.
that's pretty much right. You said in relation to our Dharma practice. Since we are shifting our minds now, how are we viewing obstacles through that shift? So it's pretty much.
Okay.
And if your thoughts, speech, and actions, or your thoughts related to those, are they bringing you closer to your freedom or further away? And monitoring and watching your mind, and are they bringing you towards your aspiration or are they bringing you away?
Okay. So without going into what the what's, I want to open up the floor to share, because I want to make sure that we got the right idea of what that talk was about so that we could use it. So make the question really simple. Can you give it again? Not the references, just the question.
As you watch your hindrances come up through and you're working towards shifting your mind, are are your obstacles? How are they bringing you to transformation, to bring you closer to your aspiration, and how are they hindering?
Okay, can somebody else give me that in another sentence?
From your Dharma practice, since you are now shifting your mind in relation to your Dharma practice, how are you viewing your obstacles? Are your obstacles different since you've started to shift your mind? Yeah,
Okay,
from engaging in your Dharma practice.
okay. And Elsie, do you wanna,
I would say,
Give a
I would say it's the
question.
same that Kadara says.
I watched it last night.
That's what I understand. I understand, that's
Pretty much
what I
exactly what you
understand,
said, but
understanding of it as well.
yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
all right, okay, so now we're open. Um, who did it? Who did the assignment? Let me see these hands again. 5, 6, okay, 7. Good, that's good, that's
So as things came up for me,
Mhm.
I was more able to remove my critical thinking mind and exerting that kind of energy, recognizing putting my energy forth in that direction was the hindrance. And step away from that and look at it through the eye of, is this taking me towards my aspiration of true freedom, or is this causing me to suffer more? And then without thinking about it, just letting that settle in as the gateway,
that's a gateway to,
moving my mind away from where it was heading, but just letting that settle without overthinking it. Just that would just come to me. That was my focus, was to recognize it, to look at the hindrance and look at it through the lens of, is this taking me closer to my aspiration? Is this taking me away from my aspiration? Is this bringing me freedom? Is this bringing me suffering? And just letting that really sit, and without having to cling or attach to, okay, Dina, so what is it doing? What is it doing? Is it bringing you, just to let it sit, brought a level of almost suspended time that allowed it to shift. And I'm not saying like delusional, I'm spaced out, just this fade
Mhm.
into something.
Okay, so Dina, I would like to acknowledge that I really think that you examine that, and the reason I say it is because Dina texts me every day, you know, like at least once a day, but sometimes 4 or 5 times a day. But in this past week, I think week or week and a half, Dina has not texted me at all, you know, because I think that she's been asking herself the question that she's articulating, you know, so there's a corresponding action when, you know, when you ask the question. And I think that's really good, so thank you. Yes.
So I have with the homework, I do have like sit with it, but it also I thought you. What would be the opposite of this daily of like sitting with these obstacles? So, I think that was a big part that you were also asked, would be what's the opposite of like when you sit with these things, what's the action that you take next from that as well?
And so that's what you did in your practice, like your.
Oh, for me, yeah, I sat with a lot of stuff and like I was able at times to feel like I can let go of that, but my mind just kept going. So it was like back and forth. So some days I was exhausted.
Yeah.
And then I would wake up in the morning and I would be like, I feel really, until my mind started to, and I could see where I could have just been still and practiced in that moment, to apply the teachings. But as I am right now, I don't always. So I had that, but but I realized like throughout the week, like there was relief in these times during the day, where I was like, okay, that's it.
Good.
Yeah.
Mhm. That's good. Else?
Well. This was quite a week to be practicing that.
And it wasn't time, that just
I know,
happened.
see what happens when you give us homework? So what I recognized was just how much of my energy is spent on reacting and responding to situations. And how little my actions and energy was in the place of generating based on my aspirations and values. And another insight was that I have it that not to engage like artistically or in the realm of generating something based on my aspirations and values. I am deeply, the tendency for me is to be avoidant of that, if that's a word. And the reason why is because I have such a huge aversion to mistakes and failure. And unless one can clear that away, one can't create something based on aspirations and values because it's just reacting and responding to situations. And so I have a neighbor, the day after, when was it, Monday, Tuesday after the election? I was in the garage sweeping and my neighbor was there. And I said, well, how do you feel after the election? And his response was neutral. That was awesome.
Good. Yes.
I have a question. Just sort of need some more discussion on the definition of the mind. You said the sixth mind, and I think that would be the chattering intellect, would be another term, maybe from the leftover Zen that I know, or the monkey mind that's always kind of trying to analyze things, like I'm doing now. Other than that, the place that you're going to, can we sort of have a definition of that more peaceful, aware, receptive?
That's a whole Dharma talk.
That's why I'm asking.
Y'all don't want me, you don't want me to go into that today because it's 1:00. But what I will say in brief, it is the mind that pieces together, it's the discriminating mind that pieces together information based on the six gates, the internal gates meeting external conditions. A consciousness arises. That's that consciousness that arises. Those three make contact and they form opinions, and you make decisions based on that information. That's that consciousness that I'm talking about. So that's our ordinary operating equipment.
Wait a minute, I misunderstood you there. So when you're in the chattering intellect, the sixth mind, you're just reacting, sort of like she said it very well.
Okay, but you keep saying the chattering intellect, and where I'm trying to redirect you from is the basis of the chattering.
Okay.
What causes the chattering?
Okay.
And that is when the internal basis, our internal faculties meet external objects. There's that consciousness that arises, and with that contact, and it says the three of these make contact. And with contact, that produces something. It produces feelings. And with feelings, it produces either aversion or craving. And that produces, so there is a whole, uh, uh, there's a trajectory of how that consciousness arises. And part of our practice is that if we understood causality, that's as far as we'd have to go in that process, and then it wouldn't just chatter and keep chattering. One could actually stop right at that point, because it would meet the understanding of causality. And then all of that energy that goes into the activities of that differentiating mind would fall apart. So Buddha Master says that when one goes not from that analyzing, not from that analyzing mind, then one will find that the aggregates cannot rise. They just won't function. And so that's how people are able to abide in peace, a kind of sustained peace regardless of what might be going on, or regardless, it's not, we talk about responding, but having the appropriate response to things. But this is something that's a level beyond even responding, because responding still has to base a response on a discriminating mind. So he's talking about getting into a state of non-discrimination. And in that state of non-discrimination, you get the full view of what is going on and what is happening, way more than I can parcel it out. Why? Well, it's because of this, and it's due to that. And it's, and so in that broader, vaster space, we can hold everything, and that space can be, as vast as that space becomes, the less there is a grasping around our view or idea of what is happening here and what we need to do. So we have a greater capacity to respond in a greater capacity than through our own limited view, or even our own limited experience. And we can tell that sometimes when we I remember when we went to the court, we got a bus together and we went up to DC when we did the cat ears. What was that?
The women's.
Yeah. A few years ago, and I was like, oh, I want to go to that. I want, so I got a bus and 52 of us went up there. And it was like great to see like all of these women together. We all on one accord. Everything is like, women are gonna show the men how to do things. This is how you have a protest, so we all go up there. But then something happened and somebody hit somebody in the head with their protest stick thing. What do you call it?
Banner.
Placard, yeah. And then, and that person pushed that person. Next thing you know, they were all beating each other over the head with the, and
Cat fight.
yeah, right, exactly. And so I'm talking about how our mind can so quickly go off into a response on things if we're not abiding in, if we are abiding outside of the information that comes to us through the sense gates. And this is part of the that's what practice enables us to do, to touch that kind of space so that we can remain steady and impartial, in every situation, or almost every situation, or in a lot more situations than we do now. Yes. Wait, let me just check in.
Yeah, I don't think you could have said it any better. I mean, what I took from that is you're basically in awareness without judgment, without having to react, without having to like respond to what you're taking in. So
That's a good way to say it, like
it's-
an awareness without judgment. Yeah, I think that's a good way to say it if you add all those other things into it, then I say it, because people are always talking about walking, being aware out here, and our kind of awareness is um we talk about like this moment by moment awareness, but the Buddha says even the present moment doesn't exist. So we know that we have not reached his definition of what awareness is, and so now we've recrafted it to speak in a certain way. Of course, we're getting away from that and saying what's higher than that is like the perfection of compassion, and then that went a little bit a ways, and then we're saying what's higher than that, and now we're on a wisdom movement just out here in general. So we have to be careful with using words that we have crafted a definition, like a Western definition, because that hasn't served us as well over the last since the movement's been here, so we're trying to work with some other words because we have already now defined certain things in a certain way, and we're sort of like hitting the brick wall, you know. So that's why I generally don't use words that we already use in our newly written and copyrighted books. Yes.
So to tie those together and the actual shift in the clarity, I had a very good long conversation with a very good Dharma friend in this room this week. That was profound. Thank you. You know who you are. Was to stop looking through the lens of why and trying to uproot anything that was a why and looking backwards and trying to move forward and just saying this is just the cause and condition of how things are. I cannot undo whatever it is, the karma, the previous everything that transpired to here, and being able to shift that energy to so now what, and what can I do that's more productive and healing for myself and others that causes less harm, and shifting that energy from trying to dig deeply into why, which was just digging a deeper hole,
Mhm.
and instead just kind of planting the rose that is gonna come and grow through the
Mhm.
crack in the sidewalk when you least expect it.
Mhm. And the reason why I asked you to do, and I thank you for all these comments, the reason why I asked you to do it is because we can think we're doing something that we're not doing. And we're wondering like, why this ain't working? But it's because we're not really working it. Because what we're saying today is what we said all year, was what we said last year, was what we said the year before last, and the 3 years before that. And we're saying that this is what we're doing, but now in that deep looking last week, I hope we could see like we're, this is not the first time I heard this. This is like the umpteenth time I've heard it. Am I actually putting this into practice when I encounter, a situation? What is, how do I relate to it? Uh, I remember watching a movie, and I'm gonna be through in 5 minutes. And in this movie, I forget the name of it, but this was a girl who was born into an unfortunate situation, and she was like a young criminal, and she got caught, but she was so good that the government, I think the British government, made her like a part of the M6 or the MI, right?
MI6.
Yeah, and so they made her like a hitman She just, instead of doing it for bad guys, she'd be hitman for good guys. And and uh, and they had to do a hit, taking out somebody who was to keep them from coming into power in another country, to kind of keep the balance of power throughout the world. And they made a mistake and they did something wrong. So then they had to call the cleanup man. And the cleanup man comes and he comes with acid and stuff. And the person they accidentally shot, they put in the bathtub and they poured the acid on them, and the acid's eating them up. And yeah, and then the cleanup man turns around. It was two women on this assignment. It turns around, and one woman is freaking out. So she's freaking out. He just shot her and threw her in the tub too. And then he looked at the other woman and he said, "You got any questions?" She said, "Nope. I was always told never sweat the small stuff." And but that has stuck with me throughout this training. Like I never sweat the small stuff. So I don't care how big it is. The mindset that I have is it's small stuff. And that's what I'm saying, that we have to really have some determination and self-assurance about the things we say that we embrace, because it's not so much from the hearing of it again and again, but it is the putting it into action in the moment when it's needed, not in the Dharma hall, but in the moment when it's needed. And then one can check up on oneself and see how well one does throughout the day. I am constantly, it's like I'm off already. I'm just telling it off already because I'm constantly checking on myself around what I say or what I think or what I do. Am I, to not be a hypocrite. And when I see something that was hypocritical, I'm telling it. I'm telling it all the time, because I want to encourage you to not hide. I don't mean for you to tell all your business like I tell all of mine. I tell all mine because
Therapy.
no, I tell all mine because it's like who doesn't care?
Shingles.
Oh, Shingles doesn't care. So I try to get to the place where I don't care about presenting a face for others, because in the end we die, and then and then there is going to be that forward moving comment. I don't want a Groundhog Day. I don't want to find myself right back, in this space. So like just really being authentic with oneself, like I'm constantly looking. But the difference is I'm looking, but not with a certain kind of judgment. It's like, you could do better than that. That wasn't what you really meant. You weren't being authentic right there. So like, okay, how can I be maybe more authentic and still tell the truth about it? When I got to think about hurting somebody's feelings, I got to think about, like all this. How could I be more authentic? How can I really help them? It's not just being authentic, but is it useful? Is it helpful? Should I be the one to say it? Should I say it right now? Like all of these things come and you go through, I find myself going through that process all the time. And in that kind of reflection, as opposed to analyzing and breaking down stuff, I'm just reflecting on what the benefit of that was. And is that what I intended? And sometimes we just have to acknowledge that where we are, I'm not going to do better at it because my mind is not slotted on that platform whereby a better action can come out can come forward, then I say, and I can be okay with that. I'm not an active Buddha. So I'm not gonna always think in the right way. I'm not gonna always say the right thing. I'm not gonna always do the right thing. I'm not even gonna always do my best because I just don't feel like it today. I don't have enough bandwidth. I don't have enough energy. And it takes being able to look at that without a judgment and a condemnation, but look at it we must, but without a judgment and a condemnation. And the more you do that, the more you can do it. The more you can take something and it ceases to be a criticism, but it becomes an instruct and a directive or an instruction that can help you get where you really want to go. And that's the difference. So Buddha Master said, when you find a teacher that criticizes you, stay with that teacher, He says, because this is 10%, meditation and is 90% cultivation. And so I'm not saying don't meditate, but I'm saying that your meditation is only going to go as high as your state of cultivation. So thank you. Anybody else want to say any? Yes. Yes, I got that, but that's not part of the Dharma talk. Let me handle this. Okay. So did we finish, everybody? Yes.
I heard, or I understood the homework to be, for me, how to balance out the arising of unwholesome late health tendencies. And honestly, what I'm realizing is, sometimes we have to set the bar really high. And then sometimes we also have to realize, where we are and set the bar for an appropriate level of development. I've got honestly, one of my big goals this year was just to have more peace in my family. My family, me, my wife, my son. And I'm really working on stretching out the time of a loving environment. And every once in a while, my reaction to someone who tries to control a situation over and over and over again, I lose my patience sometimes. And what I realize is that, we can study, I gotta be more patient, but sometimes we really have to look, or what I'm trying to really look at is my commitment to doing no harm. Like we talk about being a Buddha for the benefit of all people, but I would remember out of deep, I could hear his voice. First, do no harm. I can feel it. And so I'm realizing I have a latent tendency towards aggression when someone pushes in on me. I grew up in a fighting family. I know how to throw a check hook. And for some people, like, that's a thing, you know what I mean? And then you get to a point where it's like, is that the seed that you want to plant in the next generation? And so I'm realizing that for me, the balance is less efforting, and it's more like really looking at these principles like, okay, do you really want to live where you do no harm? And is that something you've really invested in? You've really contemplated, you really digested. And what I'm realizing is it's not. And it's something that I need to step into. Without self-flagellating, but sometimes it's frustrating sometimes when we really, like you say, when we want to do the better and we don't always do it. And you're like, man, I'm trying so hard. And therein lies the rub, right? That's the mind. It's not like the aspiration looking at the conduct.
This is very subtle. When someone's pushing in on us. After the first time, the third time, the fourth time. And I'm actually getting better at just removing myself from the situation, not putting more sticks on the fire. And I'm hoping there's a day where I'm empty enough that doesn't arise at all.
Mhm. So the operative word in all that is aspiration. Aspiration doesn't mean that it is presently operating. It is that we are reaching for, and that's what allows us not to have the self-judgment and self-condemnation. And the more we uproot our own self-judgment and self-condemnation, the less we will judge the less we will judge others. And that's how we move from the aspiration to the reality, what? State, to the reality state. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much for doing your homework. I really did remember what it was, because I already asked Soma to remind me. Julie Holt and is here visiting with her husband Doug. She actually is a Sangha member, but they live in Tennessee, in Nashville, and she's one of our Dharmacharyas. And they came to visit for this weekend, and she bought us a gift for all the members in the Sangha. And so Julie, her and Doug put these gifts together. You can.
We made you guys something. I thought of it about 6 months ago, during when I was listening on Zoom, and Pannavati said something that I've heard a bunch before that I know. She said, all conditional phenomena are like a dream, an illusion, a bubble, a shadow, morning dew, or a flash of lightning. And I thought of something that would be neat, that I wanted to make. And so Doug helped me make these for you guys. And they open it up. And I think I'm supposed to tell you that they're a little hard to work, or at least it was for me. I thought they were broken at first. I made you Buddha bubbles. Because I love bubbles. And it's a bubble. It's an illusion. And it's so funny what you were talking about today, because one of the first things, big aha moments in my path was to realize that my breath was magic, like really, like miraculous. Because when I do remember, this place, and sometimes in here that is where there are no obstacles and there's no problems and the world is blowing up around me and there's chaos, and it's okay. And I'm, it's not an obstacle anymore. But at times I don't remember that. A lot of times I don't remember that. My brain goes crazy. And so I realized this one day that my breath gets me there. And just feeling the warmer of the in-breath and the cooler of the out-breath, just that slight temperature change, and just over and over and over again, focusing on that, calms my body physically, and then calms my mind. And I can get to a place where I can go, oh yeah, okay, what was it Pannavati said? Oh, this, and then I'm okay. This is fun. So it is just an illusion that the world's blowing up around us and that everything's horrible. At least to me, it is, it's, yeah. And so you can practice with your breath. Bubbles. And you do kind of have to bring them close to your mouth, because when I found these little bubble jars at the thrift store, and I was so excited it'd be perfect, and I kept trying to blow, and I kept trying to blow them, and it wouldn't unless you hold it really close. So then that's good practice with your breath. That it's just a reminder. And the phrases in each of the little things. And maybe I didn't think about that in this time right now, but maybe it'd be just a reminder, and my offering to you, because I appreciate everything that you guys do for me. Just getting the emails and listening in, and and being a part of this being my song and my heart is always with you. I love you so much, and I can't tell you how grateful I am. So.
Oh.
I don't know if Jeff has a matter, should just leave him here.
We'll sit them on that table because we're gonna close out right now.
And Pannavati
Just
gets the
please
bag.
get one.
She
Yeah,
wants the
I
bag.
love that bag. That is a cool bag. Thank you so much for coming today. Some we see 4 times a week and some we see once a month. But whenever you come, I am grateful for your presence. Most of all, I thank you for doing your own work. Yeah, could somebody close for us? And this whole thing of continuing to think of life, as a bubble, as a dream, as a shadow, it takes away all of the deep thinking and analysis of the mind. It's another way to get to the same, place. And you can actually bypass, that critical thinking mind to get there. Yeah. Yes.
I'm hoping you stop blowing those bubbles and get you off the movie scene with the bathtub and all.
But see, that's the whole thing. That stuff is not gory to me. It's not bad. It's not evil. It's not like
It smells stuff.
right. Yeah.
Do not try to.
Yeah, it just because Buddha Master, and I'm through there, Buddha Master had me working on not judging good and bad, not throwing everything into a category of good and bad. And I'm like, well, we gotta have some good and bad going on here now, because, or what are we doing? And you say from a small perspective, that is true, but from a larger perspective, that is really not true. Or you're moving, once you have a non-discriminating mind. It said otherwise, if could kind of put ourselves in the category of bad, and there would be no bodhisattvas who would want to be bothered with us. But they overlook our badness and look at our aspiration, and they still help us. And so this getting away from these notions of judging everything, it's good or bad, it's a mind training, and you'll find that you abide in more peace and more expansiveness, and things just become what they are, not good or bad. They're just what they are. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can somebody close for? More people coming now that we're in a smaller
Of
space.
course, right, that's what was gonna happen.
Yeah.
May the merit of our time and our engaged practice, if there be any, be shared equally among all beings and realms. May the Dharma penetrate. May the Dharma bring clarity. May the Dharma bring all beings to spaces where we do no harm, where we alleviate suffering, where we experience joy and reach our greatest aspirations.
And dedicate the merit of all of our practice to all living beings everywhere. Yeah. Thank you.